Hi, I'm here with my group members. Imagine you are only 18 years old. You have lived with a severe mental illness your entire life. And let's say you suffer from paranoid schizophrenia. This means you hear different noises in your head telling you what to do and what to believe. Believing in these voices may cause you to commit crime because you constantly think someone is after you and trying to kill you. However, in reality, no one is after you, and you are just committing crime. And now that you're 18, you can be sent to jail or prison as an adult. No one can control these individuals with severe mental illness without proper medication and treatment. I am advocating for a mental health court in every congressional district in South Carolina. As of right now, there are only 2 in the state, Richland County and Charleston County. Only individuals in those counties can reap the benefits of using this court. I am asking Governor McMaster to enact this change. As the top executive in the state of South Carolina, he will have the power to enact this change. The change in policy will work so that everyone will have access to this court. Every congressional district has multiple counties. If the police, corrections, and court in that county recognizes an individual of having a severe mental illness or substance abuse problem, they would send that person to the mental health court in that district. Corinne Henderson is the Senior Policy Advisor of the Mental Health Coordinating Council in New South Wales. Although she has analyzed the criminal justice system in Australia, is very similar to what's happening in the United States as well as in South Carolina. In an academic article published by the Journal of Offender Rehabilitation, she writes that jails are now the de facto mental institutions. Since most state mental hospitals have been deinstitutionalized, jails are now been coming into contact with more and more mentally ill people. This has led to the criminalization of the mentally ill. Raymond Sabatine has been a correctional risk manager for the past 42 years, meaning this has given him special insight into the field of corrections. He also writes in the Journal of Offender Rehabilitation that mental health courts function to minimize the amount of mentally ill in jails and prisons throughout the U.S. He also states that the mental health courts have been working and are successful. An important factor he points out is that jails are the only institutions where there is no admission criteria, meaning police can just take anyone with a mental illness to jail if they're homeless or living on the street, something like that. So the mentally ill individual may end up in a jail or prison just because it's cheaper than sending them to a mental hospital. He states that it's about $50 for one person to spend a night in jail compared to the $500 of sending them to a mental hospital just for one night. South Carolina has had success with their mental health courts. The South Carolina Department of Mental Health website provides information about these courts. They talk about how around 16% of the individuals coming into contact with the criminal justice system have a recognized mental illness or substance abuse problem. The mental health courts will help this portion of the population. The outcome of implementing these courts are a decrease in recurring arrests, a decrease in the length of jail stays, and an increase of the accountability for offenders. The Richland County Mental Health Court states that 83.3% of all mental health court graduates have had no further commitment or arrest since successful completion of the program. With these outcomes, it seems almost cruel to not allow every South Carolina resident the option of using these courts if they meet the criteria of being either mentally ill or having a substance abuse problem. If there was one mental health court in every district, this would help keep the mentally ill out of the criminal justice system for good. The Sentencing Project is one of the leading advocates for criminal justice reform. They collect information about every state, and in South Carolina in 2016, the correction expenditures totaled $591 million. Mental health courts could help this number in the long run. Even though the care provided may be expensive, when it is combined with the low recidivism rate of mentally ill going back to prison or relapsing, this program could really help decrease the overall expenditures for years to come. The criminal justice system is supposed to focus on rehabilitation. Sending the mentally ill to jail or prison may help for a while. While they are in prison or jail, they receive adequate care and mental health needs. But when they are released, they are given a 2-week supply of medication, and they need to see a professional within those 2 weeks to get a refill. However, many of the people fail to do this. The mental health courts, however, provide medication, therapy, and supervision during their time, which will allow the mentally ill to function in society and stay out of the criminal justice system after they successfully complete the program. I hope this information persuades Governor McMaster to change the current mental health court system. Even though it may be expensive at first, it's definitely going to pay off in the long run. Mental health courts would help all people in South Carolina. With only 16% having a mental illness, it may not seem like it's that much. But in reality, it is, because these are the people that cannot live in society after they are released. Time and time again, these people stay out for maybe a month, and then they're going to be sent right back into the system, and the government's just going to have to keep paying for this. But if we use the mental health courts and the policies that they have enacted, they'll be able to stay out of the criminal justice system. We need to make sure that these people can function in society, because as of right now, they can't, and we don't want them to keep returning to jail. Thank you for listening to my policy proposal, and I hope you see the importance of this policy change. If anyone has any questions, you can ask me now.
Well, I'll start off with a question. Can you guys hear me, by the way?
Yes.
Okay, good. I was just double checking there. I had a little problem with the mute button. So you said you're kind of, what is it, agent you're changing is McMaster, Governor McMaster?
Yes.
Can you walk me through how it would come about? Because I don't really understand that. Like, what would he do? Who does he influence?
So obviously he's the governor, and he will have a set of ideas and policies that he may want to change. And obviously he won't be able to do that just by himself. The legislator has to go through it first. So when someone's a governor, and if the Congress in the state of South Carolina is leaning towards Republican, then most likely those individuals are going to follow what the governor wants to enact.
Okay, so you would like make like a speech or implement some sort of policy for the state of South Carolina Congress or Senate to discuss? Yes,
correct. So he would probably do something like that. Obviously, there's going to be different congressmen and senators that would want to enact a policy like that. So he would speak to those people, and they would start writing a policy bill, and then hopefully it would just be pushed through the Senate, the representatives in the Senate, and hopefully it would just get to the governor and he would be able to sign it. When someone's like a governor, he's going to have a lot more power to persuade the people of what to focus on.
All right, thank you.
So I had a couple questions. The first one being, how did you choose this specific topic?
I'm a criminal justice major, so we've always talked about a lot of different. We always talked about like mental health issues. I've taken a class called Criminal Justice and Mental Health, and it's a really big problem that people don't realize. So there's like the courts and there's more of a diversion process to make sure that people like this aren't going into jail or prison. So they have instituted these just to kind of like help it. And there has been like federal bills to provide money and grants to these people. So it just really interested me because during the class I learned about like how kind of like terrible the criminal justice system treats these people, but there's not being too much done about it because if they're committing a crime, most people are just going to say send them to jail. But I've seen documentaries where people stay out, they get released from jail and they stay out for about 3 weeks and then they're right back in because they do something else. So it just kind of affected me a lot that people aren't really doing that much for these people. And mental health courts have really helped. The problem is that they're expensive.
Well, yeah, but it seems if these people are coming back in like right after, it seems like it'll probably end up costing the same amount overall to the government.
Yeah, exactly. And
program or for just them being put back in jail consistently.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. So wait, sorry. Can both of you put on the mute? Because I'm like hearing myself speak.
Oh, sorry, that's my.
You're fine. Okay, sorry. Yeah, so the current, like in South Carolina, the Department of Corrections, they have programs inside jails and prisons for like people with substance abuse issues mostly, because about 72% of the people entering the criminal justice system have some kind of substance abuse, because that's a lot more common just from like alcohol or drugs. And their programs only last for a few weeks, maybe to months, but like they don't really help in the long run. And with the mental health courts, you're supervised like intensely for a few months, and then for the next about 3 years, you just have constant meetings and stuff like that.
So is this, I know you talked about South Carolina, but is this something you want to see roll out on like a national level?
Yeah, so hopefully this would reach nationally, because there's so many facts that show that this is something good. It's just kind of biting the bullet and paying for it. People may not want to see like spending that much money up front, but in the long run, it's really going to help the system.
I have a quick question about, and you kind of alluded to it, the comparison with the state of South Carolina and other states. Is like rehabilitation and all that, is that a problem that like South Carolina is facing the worst of, or like how does our policy of I guess rehabilitation, how does that with like other states around?
So federally, I think around the 1970s they started focusing on rehabilitation, and overall like every state they focus on this, but everyone's having a problem. South Carolina is pretty average. There's definitely a lot of states that it's a lot more intense of a problem. Like Ohio is pretty bad about it, but they're trying to fix that. So yeah, and I think that sums up our question and answer, and I will see everyone in a second. Thank you.